What's up, everybody? Thanks again for stopping by for another edition of March 4th with Mike Bauman. I, of course, am your host, Mike Bauman. Whoever you are, wherever you are listening from, thank you so much for checking out the podcast. If you're a returning listener, I greatly appreciate your continued love and support. And if you're a brand new listener to the show, man, thank you so much for hopping aboard that pirate ship. You can follow me on Instagram at March 4th Pod. I am also on YouTube and TikTok at March 4th Pod. The link tree with all of my stuff is in the podcast description. So that means if you made it here, then you found me somehow. And I truly appreciate each and every one of you taking the time to check out another edition of the March 4th with Mike Bauman podcast. How is everybody doing, man? I hope that this finds you well as it is hitting your eardrums. We are getting closer and closer to episode 200 of the podcast, which we will eclipse in 2026. So I just want to say to everybody who takes the time to like, subscribe, share, tell your friends to tell a friend, people who engage with me and the accounts on the various social media platforms with March 4th Pod. I truly love and appreciate each and every one of you. Life is a trip. There's always a balance of light and dark in the universe, and I feel very privileged and blessed to be able to have conversations on this show where hopefully if they're musicians, not only am I putting you on to new artists who I think are dope, but kind of more importantly, having conversations that hopefully inspire you or leave you feeling with a little bit more wind beneath your sails and understand that whether somebody is an up and coming artist or they've sold millions of records, everybody goes through struggles. We all have a balance of light and dark in our lives. And one of the keys in my life, I can only speak for me, that I've learned is just trying to transmute the pain and the darkness that you walk through that's inevitable in life into something positive. And it's easier said than done. We're all works in progress. Nobody is perfect. Anybody who thinks they are or anybody who thinks they're done learning in life, man, is, in my opinion, not somebody you should listen to because we're all growing and developing. Whether you're still in school and you're a teenager, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, there's always something new to learn. There's always more experiences to have to grow, and I really try to use this platform as a voice for good and positivity and hopefully humor and good music if they're musicians, and leave you guys again feeling better than when you first tuned in. So thank you for joining the show. I hope that everybody is having a great holiday season so far. We're going to be in December as this hits y'all's eardrums. So we're in the last month of 2025, man. So whether this has been a good, bad, fair to middling year for you, I just hope that, you use this last month of the year to connect with people you care about, tell the people you love them, and go confidently in the direction of your dreams and set yourself up for a better 2026, man. And if it's been a great year, hopefully you have another great year. But sometimes we wait until January to really start making changes, and tomorrow's promised to nobody, right? So I think the key is just trying to make the most of the day. It's easier said than done. But the time that we have is the most valuable resource that we have, man. So I hope that you use yours for good and light, positivity and humor, and that you can transmute whatever darkness you're going through into something positive. And speaking of transmuting darkness into something positive, I don't want to rant too much here at the beginning because I had a really great conversation with these guys. This is their first time on the show. Shout out to Shay over at Deadbolt. She reached out to me and we connected, and we've been following each other for a minute, and she represents some awesome artists, this being one of them. And she thought they'd be a great fit for the pod, and she was right. This week's guest is none other than Dead Fish Handshake. These guys are a rock and roll band from the Northeast here in the United States, for those of you listening around the world. And like a lot of bands, man, COVID got a little weird for a lot of people around the world, regardless of the industry that they were in. But it affected a lot of people in the music industry. It affected a lot of venues. It affected a lot of artists. And these guys, basically broke up during COVID, and kind of went their separate ways after years of being a band. And like a lot of bands, they have gone through lineup changes. But I think what's really cool about this conversation that you guys are going to hear is just it really is the embodiment of what this podcast is all about in terms of March 4th, perseverance, moving forward, reconciliation, turning darkness into light. And a band, it's multiple relationships. When you think about when you're in a relationship with one person, you have multiple personalities when you're dealing with a band. You've got, singer, guitarist, multiple guitarists, drummers, bassists, all of that, man, and keyboard players like in some bands. And so it's a lot of personalities to manage. It's a lot of creative energy to manage. But Dead Fish Handshake has been around for a while. We talk about their album Lies and all that jazz, which was their last full length record that came out in 2020, um, before they ended up disbanding with COVID. And that time of the band, in 2013, their EP, The Sixes, they worked on with Clint Lowery from Sevendust. And so we talk about that relationship and how it came to be. And they just released for the first time in 5 years new music, which is why we got them on here, man. They just came out with an awesome new single called Traveling at the Speed of Life, which just came out on November 7th. So, right about a month ago, as this is hitting y'all's eardrums. And it's the first single off of their new album, which is going to be called Safe in the Harms of Love, which is going to be coming out in 2026. So this was just an awesome conversation, man, to get to know these guys a little bit. We got Matthew, Rob, and V from Dead Fish Handshake on this one. And like I said, man, just an awesome talk about life, about the band, about, when they went their separate ways, about coming back together, themes in their music, and just, how things come together, in due time. I think good things happen to good people in due time, and things have a way of working out the way they're supposed to, even when there's darkness. We all got to walk through darkness to get to the light. And in this conversation, we really explore that with Dead Fish Handshake in terms of their journey as a band and coming back together. And now they have awesome new music out and more on the way. So without further ado, I'm going to shut my big yapper and give you guys my conversation with Matthew, Rob, and V of Dead Fish Handshake. Here it is. Alrighty, there we go. Well, fellas, thank you so much, man, for taking the time to do the pod. It's been awesome learning more about y'all's history, and shout out to Shay from Deadbolt for setting this up, and it just chit chatting before I officially hit record, man. There's definitely kinship here, and I really dig the new single and going back through y'all's catalog, man. So thank you for doing the pod. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, Mike. Yeah, thanks for having us, Mike. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, since we've got multiple members of the band on, man, before we officially get her going here and get into the deets of Dead Fish Handshake, why don't you tell people your name and what you do in the band, and then that way when you're speaking, they know who's talking.
All right. My name is Matthew Paul. I'm a singer of Dead Fish Handshake.
I'm Rob Ferreira. I play guitar and we do a little bit of everything in Dead Fish Handshake.
My name is Vito, and I play guitar and sing in Dead Fish Handshake.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks again for the introductions and for joining me, man. So hard rock and metal is definitely like my wheelhouse. That's where I spend the most time, even though I love music and I love hip hop. I love post rock. I will thank Stranger Things for getting me into more like synth wave and dark wave, even though I kind of grew up with like the 80s new wave and pop from like my mom. Got the classic rock from my dad. But usually where I like to start with these bad boys is for you guys. Obviously, we got this kinship with hard rock and heavier music. But what was the bug that bit you guys? Like even before Dead Fish Handshake, like is there a moment to this day after all these years of making music that still you can look back on and go, oh, that was like a rabbit hole moment. That was like a moment in my life where I realized music wasn't just like it wasn't just background noise or a commodity for me. It was something that I knew I had to pursue.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think when you ask the three of us, you're obviously going to get three different answers. And it's interesting. You think being in a band, we might all share the same thing, but we really don't. So I'll start. I'll try to be concise. I grew up with a grandfather who was a huge fan of the opera. So, vocal talent and an appreciation for that was prominent. That trickled down to my father, And my father was a big fan of the crooners, the Sinatras, the Engelbert Humperdinks, that type of era. And interestingly enough, my mother, she's got a great voice, even though she's not a trained vocalist. But she always had the Bee Gees on and Johnny Mathis and stuff like that. So there was really never a moment that you walked into my home without hearing music. I have older siblings too, like you mentioned when we were talking offline, and they were growing up in the '80s metal and stuff like that. So there were Bon Jovi posters on the wall, and as I came into my formative years, that's when grunge was coming. So my siblings that were into the hair metal, they now found Pearl Jam, Nirvana, the Chili Peppers, to some degree. So when I became old enough to attach to something, I stole those tapes, and I used to lay on the floor in my sister's bedroom, just thinking that I found somebody that understood the things that I didn't even understand about myself. And I listened and listened and listened. And as I got older, I found U2, the Joshua Tree and Octung Baby. I found Soundgarden, Super Unknown, and I found the Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails. And it was when I found that's when I really wanted to be a singer. So that's probably the rabbit hole that began for me that I'm still stuck in now.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, as far as again, we all have that history, right? That moment. For me, I had an older brother that to this day still plays guitar, and he was not really always an original in an original band or anything like that, but it was just like the music was always around, the classic rock was always around. And funny enough, as I was growing up, a lot of my environment and my friends and everything, they were big hip hop heads, and so I got a dose of that. As far back as probably maybe 9 or 10 years old, I had this little acoustic guitar, and I remember sitting in the garage we had one drum, and a buddy up the street of mine, would just bang on the drum a beat like boom bash, and I was sitting there. I kid you not, I didn't know what to sing about, but I had a supermarket circular right there, and lemons are 5.99 or whatever it was, and I was singing along to like the most basic chords while he was boom bashing. And through my brother, I got exposed to more music, and again through friends and everything. So coming up in the '90s, it was a lot of rock, a lot of rock of the time, as Matt said. That Seattle sound, and hip hop and all these. It was an amalgamation of all that. Over time, I kind of got that newfound appreciation for everything that my current favorite bands were pulling from. So a lot of people, I've always been interested in what made my favorite band get to be my favorite band, and so I would go and dig into the history of it all. And so that's where bands like Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, like, oh, they're big Led Zeppelin fans, they're big Doors fans, and all this, and I started kind of just going back in that vein. And really, the moment that changed for me was my first concert. I went to Madison Square Garden to watch Jimmy Page and Robert Plant on their Unleaded tour, and for me, it was just you know it was life changing. It was that moment that I knew, hey man, I want to do something with music. Hey older brother, hey mom and dad, can you buy me a guitar? Are you sure, man? You sure it's not going to sit in the closet after 3 weeks? No, 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 no. I'm going to play this thing, and that was it. And I got a little Fender Strat that I still have to this day, um, and that was it. I just started kind of plotting, starting to play my favorite songs, figure out how to write a song. Um, and it was probably in high school, late high school, when I started, you know, hooking up with people to play with. And then kind of never looked back from there.
Well, I appreciate y'all sharing that about how you got into music, man, especially like that early 90s vibe. Like that was kind of my introduction to like that era of music. My big brother Brandon is well, let's see, I'm 37. He's 43 now. He's 6 years older than me. So you look up to your big brother like growing up and in that era of MTV and everything, and then in the mid '90s when Korn started doing their thing, um, that kind of helped get me into a heavier direction too. But I don't know. There was something. Sometimes I wish I could time travel and just be like 15, 16 in like 1991, like that. And even in that year particular, there were so many great records that came out like that year. Um, but all those singers, man, I think with like whether it was like Chris Cornell, Eddie Vedder, um, Scott Weiland, like all those guys, I really feel like sang from their soul. You know what I mean? And they were unique voices. So even though they had those influences with like the Zeppelins and stuff, like you were talking about, Rob, like they all kind of I feel like had their own sound. Like
For
you know
sure.
Lane Staley, Alice in Chains, another one that was a huge influence for me to this day. So fast forwarding it for y'all, man, like bringing it to Dead Fish Handshake. And I know in previous interviews, this is the one question where unfortunately I can't be like super unique about how did you guys come together, but I am curious about like the genesis of you guys, especially around that time, like 2011. Ironically, that was kind of when I was sort of jump starting things myself here, as doing podcasting and journalism. So can you tell me and the people who maybe aren't aware of Dead Fish Handshake how you guys all came together?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny what you're saying because we all started off being heavy. Like when we were younger. I think when you're younger, you're just attracted to the heavier bands and the edgier stuff and all that stuff. And the reason why I say that is, I actually came up in the metal scene, singing in a metal band. Rob came up playing in an alternative metal band. And in the MySpace days, because that's how we used to do it. Back in my day, when we walked through 6 feet of snow, in order to play a show, we were exchanging messages on MySpace. And Rob and I get introduced by a manager to the bands that we were in. That manager was probably the original Dead Fish Handshake. And for anybody that doesn't know what the Dead Fish Handshake is it's a tongue-in-cheek wink at a lot of the insincere people in music that come along making promises only to look for money and leave you hanging. They were the original Dead Fish Handshake of music. So we had a Dead Fish Handshake between us, but we ended up meeting each other, exchanging some messages. We played some shows together, and for me, I would sit in the audience and I would watch them perform in Down Shallow, and I was blown away. I thought Rob was one of the best guitar players I saw, but I also thought he was the best performer that was going on at the scene at the time. And the singer of their band was a dude named Alex, and I was floored with him too. I heard some things that previously I wasn't doing. So it was an honor, to invite them out to our scene and vice versa and play. Beyond the stage, we became friends. We hung out and I had a lot of respect, not just for the musicians that they were, but for the men that they were. And I think Rob and I, kind of had the most in common. I think we always at least had good conversation. Even if we were disagreeing, we knew there was a way to do it. So long story short, one day we went through the trials and tribulations of our own band, and Rob actually came to me as that big brother, and he said, "Hey, he's like, what do you think about getting out of a metal band and doing something a little more rock oriented? I think your voice would be better suited for that." And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? Let's do it," because I'd be a fool, to not take advice from somebody, that I obviously had a lot of respect for. So, we started Dead Fish Handshake, as an acoustic duo. And we sat down, we wrote some songs, and I began to realize that my previous band was really just a vessel to get here, because now I was working with somebody that really knew how to write and somebody who could also produce me and help me become a better singer. And that's really, how it began. We liked the material so much. And I'm sorry that I'm being long-winded, but, there's no way to, give you a short answer to this.
Oh no,
But
you're good.
we liked the material so much, and the fans that we had built in our respective regions, they really liked what we were doing too. They liked it better than our other bands, and that felt good. So naturally, you get a little bit of that high, and you look at each other and say, "Hey, you know what? How would this be if we built it up and we made it, heavy, or we made it rocking?" So we went out and we looked for a guitar player, a bass player, and a drummer. And it's interesting because the first guy that we looked at was Vito. And the first bassist that we looked at was Ant, who, unfortunately isn't on the call right now. They didn't join the band at the time. They actually, have come around now. So it's just interesting how, 100 years later, the original band, what it was supposed to be, is now intact, and it really feels, like it was all, pretty much meant to be. So I'm sure Rob's got a lot to chime into, but that's the initial talking points.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it, Matt. There was a lot there. Meeting each other. There was always as we got those conversations going, and a lot of what Matt did for his band up in Rhode Island, I was doing for my band in Jersey. A lot of the business end, a lot of the booking, and all that stuff, and we would swap ideas. We swapped shows. We brought each other to our regions, and then we always talked about, like, we should do something, man. We should, yeah. We're busy, you're busy, so on. And as Matt said, as things kind of start winding down with your respective bands, we're like, all right, man. I started just kind of demoing some ideas, stuff that I wasn't using in Down Shallow by design, and I'm like, I'm gonna send him 10 tracks. I sent them 10 demos. And truth be told, I'm in Jersey, he's in Rhode Island. It's not a world away, but it's not your orthodox kind of situation where you're going to be getting together every week. So I think it was our love for the music that we grew up on that really kind of brought us together, at least brought us together artistically. And it was really like, hey, let's just put these songs together, do it, maybe even have it be a one-off. I mean, how are we going to be in a band? We're in different states, hence the name of the record, Across State Lines, right? Um, so we, to Matt's point, like, we liked what we were doing so much, and we did show it around to, people in our circle, and they're like, this is really good. And we're like, you want to do a show? You want to put some shows together? And so, as Matt said, we did a couple acoustic shows, and then we did try to round out the band. We finally did. And it was kind of like, again, we didn't look back. It was all of a sudden the plan to make this a one-off, and go on and, possibly form my own band here, him form his own band up there. All of a sudden it became, this is us. This is what we got to do. And it's funny because, yes, that is our first record, but it was the time spent after that first record that really we forged our sound, of what it can be. I think going in, it was like, well, I think we're gonna write this kind of stuff because we love this kind of stuff, and you're almost kind of wearing your influences on your sleeve. But then you start to kind of really piggyback off each other and figure out what it is that this guy does great, and that's one of the things that I'll say to the end of the time. Matt and I'm only, I'm narrowing it down to Matt and I because it was since the beginning. But Matt and I, we always had um, a mutual respect for what what each of us brought to the table, and admiration for, what it is that we could do creatively. And so, the same way that, he'll give me the credit for, hey, producing him to help push him to be a better singer. He does the same for me, and that's what's special about this band in general. I think we all kind of, there's a healthy competition. Even with Vito in the band now for many years. Obviously, I was the only guitar player. We brought Vito on as it was kind of a great full circle moment, and we'll get there. But also just having him in the band. One of the things that I guess I haven't mentioned was that very early on in my previous band, Down Shallow, Vito was there, and then for whatever reason, scheduling, like, we weren't able to keep it on. But so even back in those days, there's a lot of bands that have two guitars, and they're not quite sure like how to use them. And again, this is not putting anyone down, but like I always kind of felt like Vito and I, like we kind of filled each other's gaps, you know, and we played well. If he's doing this, I'm doing that. I'm listening to him. He's listening to me. And so all these years later, um, you know, it was during COVID. We invited him down so we could do like this live stream because nobody was doing shows, and we basically kept him on full time, and having him in the band, there's that healthy competition, you know, and it's never from a malicious intent. It's always like just I'm pushing you to be better, you're pushing me to be better, and same thing as, you know, Matt and I and all the guys, you know, like it's always kind of been that. And so that was kind of the genesis of what brought us together, and then we forged our sound in getting to know each other and in pushing each other the best that we can within reason, you know.
For sure, for sure. I appreciate you sharing that, it is cool to hear the backstory too. And I know you guys have probably shared your story before, but thanks for sharing it with me because
Absolutely.
when you get those influences and you come together and you feel that energy and the vibe in the room, I think that's so huge. And like you were talking about, Rob, like we see two guitar setups. I feel like a lot now. Um, but and we'll get into it, maybe segue into it. But like we talked about before the jump, that was one of the things that I always loved about Sevendust was the way that John and Clint would play off of each other, and it was even cool in like 2012 to see the bands do their side projects outside of Sevendust and kind of you could kind of hear like what John when he did Projected what he kind of brought to Sevendust and when Clint and Morgan did that Call Me No One record you could kind of hear what he brought to the table. So I'm with you on the two guitars, like it's and a really an underrated duo to me is like Mike and Stone from Pearl Jam. I don't think they get enough credit, honestly, for just the
Agreed.
of riffs like in their wheelhouse or just hooks, and just the way that they play. But yeah, so you guys come out the gate with across state lines. Then you mentioned forming your sound. Uh, and V, anytime you want to jump in, man, too. Thanks again for hopping back on. Sorry about it was cutting out earlier, I think, when you were on the train, but I appreciate you coming back on, man. Um, but the Sixes, that was the one that Clint produced, if I'm not mistaken. How did
Correct.
you link up with Clint from Sevendust?
He, I'll jump in first. So, uh, we were approached by a studio that was pretty prominent in New Jersey. And the studio owners had reached out to Sevendust, and I think Clint specifically. I could be wrong about this, but it was either Clint or Sevendust specifically, and they had made them an offer to come and record over there and use certain gear. And I think Sevendust at the time, I'm not speaking out of school. I think they'd tell you the same thing. They were probably, making some questionable financial decisions, so they probably looked at it as a good opportunity. So I think once Clint got involved, the studio owner of Architect, which that's the name of the studio, they ended up becoming Clint's manager. With that said, I think anytime a name, comes across that's, in the industry and, let's get some bands involved to let them produce and, let's call it what it is, make some money, too along the way. But, hey, that's how it works. That's what the industry's like. And any band like us at the time that, thought they had a good product and wanted to make some headway, we jumped at the chance to do it. So we said yes, and we were going to take whatever demos we were working on at the time, and go with Clint and make a record. And initially, look, we were a lot younger, so we were fanboys, and we loved Sevendust, and oh man, Clint Lowery's gonna. I just that Dark New Day record's amazing, blah blah blah. But what was really cool was the fact that we were the first band that he produced. He's since then he's worked with tons, but we take a lot of pride in being the first band that worked with him. He was wonderful. He's still a friend to this day. But what was really great about working with him is we don't sound like Sevendust. and he didn't make us sound like Sevendust. He is a writing machine. The fact that he's worked with so many bands is a testament to just how creative, he is and how endless, his talent is. But working with him opened doors for us, and that's what it was supposed to be. So to us, it was money well spent. It definitely brought us up a notch in terms of just people, paying attention. But from there, and it's no disrespect to him, but from there, we've done everything we can to, live as us. And but we credit him. He made us better songwriters, and due to his friendship and his guidance, I think we've been able to take a step forward in how we write. But very proudly, years later, we can stand on our own, and we sound like Dead Fish Handshake. We're grateful for the Sevendust connection, but we're not necessarily tied to them in any way. So.
Appreciate that, Robert. V. Anything you guys want to add to that? And I know V. You said came into the band later on, but anything you guys want to add to that in terms of like that cycle with the Sixes?
Yeah, that was it was kind of it was a unique time for us. Again, like we were kind of forging our sound, and having the opportunity to work with someone like Clint. Again, it did, as Matt said, it really did just make us hyper aware of everything. We cut that record in less than a week. That's something that we had never done before in any of our previous lineups, or even on the first record. That was kind of, the first record was a long-winded process. This one was bang bang, and we, as Matt said, we came in with demos. We deconstructed them, reconstructed them on the spot, bang bang, and it was out. And it was an exciting time because a lot of times when you write a song, you live with it for a while, you tweak it, and that's not to say that you're not excited by your music. You always are. You're proud of it. But it was such a flash that week that all of a sudden when we got back, the mixes were like, oh dang, like we did this, and like it didn't, like, I remember doing this, but like it was all still fresh, and it was fresh, it was exciting. And one of the things I learned about with working with him was just, again, just how prolific he is, and how someone should be. It was not like, all right guys, let's go take a break. It was bang bang. Everything was like, let's move. We're here to work. Yes, be creative, be fun, but we're here to get this under control and get it going. And so that was a memorable time for sure, man. And he's a great dude. We ended up working loosely with him. I think later with Nothing Stays Gold and All Time Low on those couple singles. And it's always nice to have somebody to go and get an opinion from, someone that's been around. And yeah, I'll cherish that moment all the time.
I'm going to add something to that too, Mike, and I really hope I don't sound arrogant, when I say this, because I'm saying this as humbly as possible, but just trying to be, make the interview about Dead Fish. Clint and Morgan were on that record, the Sixes, and there's no way in hell it would have been as good as it was without them. But what was a real big confidence booster for us, and I have to eliminate Vito from this only because he wasn't in the band at the time, but the biggest song on the Sixes for us was a song called Leave the Light On. And it's still, I would say it's still our most popular, and it's definitely still the one that's requested most amongst the fans. And, the main writers on that song are Rob and I. So to know that, to come out of that process with the heavy hitters that we had working with us, and know that what's something that we did finally, took off for us a little bit. That was huge, because that was telling us that, hey, we can stand on our own. We can do this on our own. Clint was definitely the sage, giving us that guidance and backing us up and really, putting the stamp on it. But it was really nice to look back and know that something that we were the main writers on, really became what the fans attached to the most. So, for whatever that's worth.
For sure. And like you said, I think it's it's awesome when you get to connect with good people in the industry, and especially like describing the way you did the meaning behind the band name. And I appreciate you sharing that because it's always cool to hear how bands come up with that. But it's funny you mentioned that song, man, because the two songs that I wrote down, and I know like I hate like picking favorites, man. It's probably like asking somebody, hey, who's your favorite kid? You know what I mean? Especially when there's songs that like come from your soul and your bones and your fingers, you know. But the Blackest Skies and Leave the Light On were two from that one when I was listening back to y'all's music that I really liked and connected with a lot. And I loved how you guys also did a deluxe version with acoustic, like stripped down versions of the songs. Like that's always one of my favorites. And just to give you guys your flowers too, man. And thanks again so much, y'all, for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Enjoy the conversation. Um,
Likewise.
Lies and all that jazz. That's a great listen. I was picking up a lot of like heartbreak and loss on that one. But your boy loves some good sad songs. So uh there's a lot of them I loved on that one. No One's Island, 1111, Holding On to Strings, In Dreams kind of had like a slower ethereal vibe. Um, and the one where it's just like the instrumental track, that one, it's is it A Love Encapsulated in Some Harmony? Uh, like that or I'm trying to think of the full title. I have it pulled up here.
I'm trying to think of the title too, man.
A love encapsulated in some harmonious, illuminating atmosphere.
Yes, yes, like even that is like a cool interlude was just like a really beautiful piece of music. Like I feel like if I was like dreaming and like having a good dream or even on some of these apps, I mean, I'm not going to name no names because they're not sponsors. But like these apps where like they help you, you know, I've listened to some of the, you know, with the anxiety stuff, the binaural beats and stress music, like that's something like you could play that to me and I'd be like, all right, this is like instant calm. But yeah, I really you know that whole record, man, front to back, like I think the only two or three tracks I didn't mention, like Still, Then It Rains, I really feel like that was like an awesome front to back listen too. So there's not even really a
Appreciate
question,
that, man.
but
Well,
that was a great front to back listen.
well, Mike, I'm gonna put Rob Ferreira on Front Street right now. Ready?
Yeah, do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Gonna make this podcast interesting. Okay, see the arguing, not just the good times. It's not Rob's favorite record.
It's true.
I actually, I actually think we were a little contentious at that time. We're not to the point that we hated anybody, but I think that was probably the moment in the band where we were getting really annoyed with each other. I was really stuck on the last record, the Sixes, and working with Clint, and I still wanted to, go that route. And Rob was dead set against not. And then some of the infighting, began, and the compromises come, and whatever. And life was in the way. You mentioned some of the lyrical themes. Those are all things that we were living. So when you take that into context on what we were going through, it's only natural that tension can spill over. But I think I got my way a lot on Lies and All That Jazz, and I think Rob did everything he could to deal with my ego at that point and what he could do artistically to make it more interesting. So when you bring up the interlude and when you bring up the ethereal components, I think that was him just trying to pick his spots to deal with me. But I'm glad you like the record. so I'm glad that it is, because when I listen back to it too, I do think I do think there's a lot of good stuff there. But that was the history of that record, and we're still together to this day. But I think that the time period of making that album, I think that's one of the reasons we had decided to take a break. When we decided to call it quits. But clearly we still had enough respect for each other to know that what we had was special, and to get over ourselves. Mostly me.
You know what? Just to add to that, I I I'm proud of that record. I am. There is a lot of good stuff there. I think a lot of my writing is headspace. It's where I'm at, you know. And as we were in between the Sixes and Lies, we put out a double single in like 2014 or something like that. And then we did a couple singles later in Love Remains and Devolution. And this band has always been, in my opinion, this band has always been more than the output that people have heard. You know, there's a lot of stuff that gets written, and then when we go and we start narrowing down what's going to make the record, you know, like, hey, we haven't been around in a while. Let's get a set of all bangers. Let's you know, like, that's what people love. That's what, you know, that's what they're expecting. And I'm like, all right, well, right now, I'm not in that headspace. I wrote that song 3 years ago. I don't want to do that. I want to do what I'm doing right now. And you know, and that's kind of like, again, where the butting of heads kind of becomes. And I've always been a fan of bands that can stretch their creative legs. You know, I mentioned, you know, like bands that evolve, and I know that sometimes that can alienate a fan base, but I also know bands that do that and take their fans on a journey with them, and that's always been, you know, I don't want somebody that's going to put out the same record again and again, and not that Lies is anything like the previous, but like I really thought that we had a collection of songs that we could have you know, zigged instead of zagging, you know. And so we compromised and put together that record, and I told Matt, like, all right, man, but the next one, you know, the next one's mine, bro. And so that was, you know, that was kind of that. But then, you know, we put the record out, and unfortunately, you know, as we know, we were finishing it up, COVID hit, everything just completely, you know, locked up, and then we have this record, we can't play it, we can't promote it. What do we do here? Do we just put it out? Is that insensitive to the, you know, what's going on in the world? But you know what, the power of music, sometimes maybe people need an outlet because they're not getting something. So we went back and forth, we sat on that record for a little bit, and then we finally, like, you know what, let's just, I know we can't promote it, but let's just put it out. It was already a moment in time, and so now let's go, and it can't sit on the shelf for another year or two. So let's do it. And we did it. And unfortunately, you know, we weren't really able to bring those songs live to people. Hence, the idea behind doing a live stream. Um, and you know, like, we just kind of, it was kind of cast off into a proverbial void, and you know, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with it. And it took a while, as we know, as the world knows, for everything to kind of reopen. So I think that record has a lot of goodness in it, um, and I think that it would be looked at differently probably if we had the opportunity to promote it. And so what's cool about this new album and where we're going with it is that we get to bring these songs live, but we also kind of get to bring songs from Lies live, like almost kind of for the first time. Like, the people haven't heard these songs, so that's kind of a neat aspect, and it's a before and after Vito situation too. So, like, you know, he brings his his know-how and his flair to some of the old songs too, and that's what's exciting. And that's again, each album has its uniqueness. And if I may, just about the album title, that was, you know, that was a little passive aggressive on my part because it was Lies and all that jazz. It's like I'm putting out, or we're putting out, a record that, quite frankly, like, it's not where I'm at right now musically. I want to do this. And so it's a cool record. Check it out. But there's a little lie there, because what I really want to do is this. And right now we're doing that. But hey, onward and upward, right? And we have a plethora of stuff that even didn't make this record, and we're just keep on going, man. Keep on trucking.
Yeah, and you know something, Mike, like, just to talk about the discography quickly and, you know, the point of everything, you know, the first album, Across State Lines, was, two guys coming together as friends, trying to sound like our idols. The Sixes was us finally taking a larger step, into a bigger arena, so to speak. Lies was the album that needed to be made in order to branch out. I won't say abandon or shake from the Clint Lowery tree, but it was what needed to be made to be able to branch out from that. And it's all leading up to the album we have now, which is called Safe in the Harms of Love. That's hopefully going to be out by January, where now you're kind of hearing us as mature men from all stages of our career. And I think we've honored the heaviness that some people like from us. But I also think we've honored the balladry that a lot of people like from us. And I think we've taken other chances that just show that, we can do a lot more than just, drop D. So, again, just to put a cap on it, that Lies album, I don't think we'd be here today without that record. So I'm glad that you like it, and I'm glad Rob came around on it because I think because I think he would agree. I think it was what needed to be made in order for us to be able to experiment as much as we can now without any rules in place.
Hell yeah, and I appreciate you guys giving the history on that one because I mean I'm sure I'm not saying anything that you guys don't know as musicians, but songs, albums, they're moments in time. Like we were talking about how we all kind of you guys got into music, and I share a love for all those same bands. Like I can when I listen to Wood, just the way that starts from Alice in Chains, like it takes me right back to the 90s, and it's still as fresh and awesome now, and the feelings that it elicits for me now are still the same. Um, and yeah, that record, I feel like it has like a nostalgia vibe. Like I could tell lyrically, like the themes of that. Like I think anybody can relate to loss, heartbreak, those kind of feelings. It happens to the best of us. It happens to most of us in life, and music is a great time capsule for that. But I love the title of the new album. For people who maybe didn't catch it, it's not Safe in the Arms of Love, it's in the harms of love, right? Which is kind of like a cool play on words. So, and with the theme of this show being, perseverance and moving forward, um, you guys mentioned like, and I think that happened to a lot of bands, right? COVID, it turned the world upside down. I mean, we all lived it. It was one of the craziest times, I think, for a lot of people. There's so much uncertainty. Even people who kind of lean hermit like me, there's a difference between like, yo, I'm choosing to stay in versus like, oh gosh, I don't like it's unsafe to maybe go out and be around people. And it was a really weird time. Um, the the theme of reconciliation and just, I mean, obviously you guys have a friendship that goes back, but being able to and maybe reconcile is too heavy a word because obviously I'm learning about y'all's journey too beyond the research I've done in this conversation. But to circle back and to put out Safe in the Harms of Love, that's going to be coming out in 2026. And the new single, as we're talking, just came out a week ago, Traveling at the Speed of Life. Like what ultimately kind of led to you guys going, hey, we're not done with Dead Fish Handshake yet. We've got more to say beyond the music that's already written, or was it always just a break?
Oh, this is the part of the show that, we'll get a little deep and very human on. You mentioned a few times, and I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to make a long story about it. You mentioned that, you can hear a lot of, tales of woe and a lot of love and loss in the music. And, I always go back and forth with that. I'm obviously the main lyricist in the band, and something that bothers me is how cliche rock music especially can be, because, we're always talking about loss. We're always talking about being depressed. We're always talking about love and heartbreak. And, there's a reason for that, because yes, we all go through it. It's very, very relatable. But I think the challenge is, how do you make that sound new, and how do you make it sound unique in a way that still appeals to a lot of people? That to me, that's hard to do. So as a writer, I've always chosen to write introspectively as opposed to observationally. But I think this time, we needed to do both in order to find a uniqueness. And one of the cool things about the new album is, and the album title, Rob stepped in and, he's just as much of a wordsmith as me, if not more at times. So he started to write some lyrics. He sang on a song on this album. And the title, came from him, so I think that needed to happen. And I would never put us on Pearl Jam's level, but it reminded me a lot of After No Code when they came in with Yield. And, that was really all of the band writing. And I think that's, something that helped them feel reborn, and just give them another dimension, and I think, this is our Yield in that way. As far as reconciliation goes, I think we had a lot to reconcile. I mean, we never gave up on one another. We never not wanted to be friends with each other. But he may say something different when it goes over to him. But COVID was not easy on anybody. We were a band that was really shaken. Not only with COVID, but we have had some very profound deaths in this band. People that were very, very important, to us. All of that happened. We had relationships that were tumultuous. We had, some romantic turmoil, that was going on. So, all of that bleeds in. Does it make a good song that you cry to in the car and that somebody, yeah, it probably does, but it takes its toll too. I think at the end of the day we just really knew that for all the people that we lost, for all the things that we had been through, they deserved better. And not just them, we did. We deserved better. Dead Fish Handshake deserved better. We weren't meant to just be the epitaph or the words on a gravestone. We were meant to keep inspiring and keep showing people that, hey, we're in this together. Hopefully where we're going is better than where we began. So we decided to get back together. And we decided to put an album out. Traveling at the Speed of Life, the lyrics in that, I wrote them because of that overall situation. I started writing it during COVID. It's not about COVID, but it's about really an amalgamation of everything that we were going through. We're on this ride together. Does it suck sometimes? Yeah, it does. But we're in it together, and hopefully we're going to see a better day. I don't mean to be too long-winded, but I just want to really drive home the point of the magnitude of what we were dealing with. Me personally, my best friend and someone I loved very much, passed away during the making of this record. We parted ways with our bassist during this record. It wasn't all bad. Vito had some good news. He became a new father, but that comes with challenges too. But every day we were waking up and we were just being pummeled. And I know that if that's happening to us, it's also happening to everybody else. Michael Stipe from REM, he wrote Everybody Hurts, and he said, if one person feels that way, you can bet 1,000 other people do too. And that's why, music is so relatable. So again, Dead Fish Handshake needed to not only be about our healing and the outlet that we have, but, we're in this to inspire. And it's not to get accolades. It's not for people to worship us. It's not for people to tell us how, great we are and all that stuff. It's to show a commonality. Luckily we have a talent where we can make a song that somebody might like. So that's our responsibility for humanity. And we hold that very, very dear to us. And I'm thrilled that somebody like you and the fans that we do have, I am thrilled that they come up to me and share their stories. because what you don't know is, again, like what our story is and what we've gone through. We didn't just write words that are sad because they sound good. Every word in those records is what we've lived through. So to know that people are supporting us, like even when you come to a show, and I know I'm talking way too much right now, but it's important to me. When you come to a show, you're not just buying a ticket. You're coming there in solidarity, to give support, not just, to the band. You're supporting another day above ground where we're breathing. And I'm sorry, if I'm taking this, too deep, but that's what the band means. And, are we ever going to be the most successful band in the world? Probably not. But, success to me has evolved into that. And if I can get, a full room of people who believe in that, and the stories that we've lived through have inspired that, then you know what, we've done something right. So I hope, that it continues to happen. And I hope Safe in the Arms of Love, really, continues to build that and tributes the people that we've lost and the people that, that we wish were still here to see us.
Well, no need to apologize, man. Like I'm really sorry for your loss, genuinely.
Thank you.
Losing people close to you it's never easy. There's never a good time to go, So I'm sorry that you went through that, but I'm happy that you have an outlet um with music to be able to get that stuff out, like we were talking about before we hit record. I really do think that a lot of people would still be here, if they felt like they had a way to kind of, process darkness, in a healthy manner. And music is obviously a beautiful part of that. So no, don't worry about that's why I love doing these podcasts is, people getting a chance to expound and, you know, so you don't got to worry about whether a response is too long or too short, brother. I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to after listening to the new single. And thanks again so much, you guys, for doing this with me. Especially after listening to Traveling at the Speed of Life, I'm really excited to listen to the rest of the record, and I'm sure Dead Fish Handshake fans are as well. And I do love the wordplay with "safe in the harms of love." And I was wondering, and I don't want you guys to let anything out the bag that you're not ready to divulge on yet. And kudos, by the way, to the press that you guys are already getting. People like Jesse Lee, picking up the song, and he's obviously a huge like tastemaker and a guy who's really plugged in musically, especially in this hard rock and kind of metal realm. But can you guys expound a little bit more on the title? Because I really do love that. Like, because at first blush, like people, oh, safe in the arms. Oh no, it's harms of love, and just even that, like the harms of love part. I think that's cool.
So, yeah, basically, it's a lot of on the heels of what I mentioned before about who we are and what we have to say. And a lot of times in a band, there's strategy and calculation of hey, we should probably do, we have these 20 songs, but like 10 of them are what's expected of us. Let's kind of go do that. And we spent years doing that. And again, I'm proud of all our stuff. So make no mistake about that. But to the point of like the opposite of what kind of lies was, this record was, hey man, we like this style of music. We like a little Americana. We like a little like EDM, synthy, like just industrial. We want to push ourselves. I mean, there's accordion on this record, on a track. We like this, and a lot of times people are going to hear that and they're going to be like, "What? What are they doing? Like, this is not Dead Fish Handshake." And so, but there's a safety in, despite being in the harms of it all, like it's something that you love and you're being genuine about it because it's something that comes from in here, and so despite what everyone can potentially prejudge it before they hear it, we're going with it. This collection of songs is it's not completely foreign, there's enough familiarity to what Dead Fish Handshake is, but at the same time, there are some chances that are taken, and we wanted to just basically just go all in. You know, like we're gonna do this, regardless of what's expected. It's because at the end of the day, it's if it's authentic to you, you can look back and be like, you know what, man, like I did this, we did this, and if it connects with someone, which we hope it does, but if it connects, that's gravy. But if you can measure your success by, hey man, I could look back in 10, 20 years and be like, this was a damn good record, and it was what we did at the time. We went all in, with what we got. That's success for me. You know, it's maybe it's on a band our level, it's a little silly to talk about legacy, but that's what's in it for me personally. When I one day I'm gonna look back, and you know, my kids and grandkids, and be able to say like, hey, I did this. That matters to me. That's just a personal thing for me. And so, Safe in the Arms of Love is basically just, you know, we're going to just barrel through, regardless of what the preconceived notion may be on the band, and but we're gonna feel good about it because it's coming from the heart. It's coming from a safe place, and you might sometimes things you love might put you in harm's way, um, but you'll come out the other side as long as you keep it genuine, you keep it authentic, and that's essentially what the album title was, a nod to, "Safe in the Arms of Love."
And you know something, Mike, you know, when he says that, and I love how he talks about the, you know, the musicianship side of it, you know, from the personal side of it is, you know, we were harmed by a lot of love, you know, that we had over the years. You know, because when you wear your heart on your sleeve, you know, in this world, you know, you're walking into knives and swords and everything else. Um, the band is where we were safe. You know, I even when I was going through the tough times, and you know, I'm still going through them now, and you know, and whatever the other guys, you know, are going through too. I don't, you know, want to talk about their stuff publicly, but you know, in that room, we're safe. You know, and we've always been safe with each other. And that's something that I really hope, you know, again, goes out to the fans. You know, when you come to a Dead Fish show or you're part of the Dead Fish community, you are safe. You are with people who understand, and you're with people that want to hear your story. And you know, there's a lot of solidarity with that. So
Our music is, on a personal level, therapeutic. It's cathartic. You know, there are times where we just, you know, we're just in that room, and um, something magical kind of happens, and we're just like, you know, it's the musical equivalent of almost like, you know, finishing each other's sentences, um, and there's there's that there's just that bond, that musical bond that I cherish, and that was part of, not to backtrack, but that was part of the reconciliation, if you will. You know, there was more to say. There's, you know, we bring out great things in one another, and I think the music is better for it. You know, we push each other, personally, you know, as brothers. Just it's a familial bond. You know what I mean? And this record hopefully is a testament to, what we've been through and where we're going.
and Mike, I wanted to say something too, and you know, again, I know I'm getting off on tangents, but you know, when we had toured, um, we went on our first tour, you know, years ago with the Sixes, and you know, at the time, I think I did what any, you know, egotistical, you know, singer would think, like, oh, you know, it's going to be women, it's going to be parties, it's going to be, you know, all the drugs and alcohol you could possibly love, you know, on the road, and it is, you know, it is some of those things, but what it really was in a lot of ways was, it was meeting a lot of hurt people, and it was really opening my eyes. I think other guys might say the same, but you know, but maybe more for me because I would be the one, you know, in the thick of it, you know, hearing a lot of the people, and they were just telling me these really, really horrible stories of things that had happened to them. And as an empathetic person, you can't help but want to, throw your arms around everybody you can, and obviously you can't. But the bottom line is it was telling me that there were just so many people in need of someone to listen to them. So anyway, I guess before I lose my train of thought, the point that I'm making is that I wanted to turn that into inspiration, and I almost felt guilty because I felt like every song we were writing was just really bringing everybody down. They assured me that that's not how they felt, but I couldn't help but think that way. I didn't want to keep putting more depression and more death, and reminders of those things. So the lyrical content this time around, the themes are still heavy. The themes are, still have depth to them because, that's how we write from. But, the music is a little more hopeful. It's a little more evolved. It's a little more mature. It's saying, hey, we're not stuck in the throes of all the depression. We're there, we felt it, but we're still here, and we're coming out of it. It's okay to be happy. Rob's somebody, who that's where I had inspiration from him in this band. I used to think rock music just has to be sad, and it has to be dealing with something horrible all the time. No, it doesn't, and then he's somebody that, reminded me of that. And Traveling at the Speed of Life, it's not a happy song by any means, but, I'll be damned if you're not moving around to it and feeling, a little hopeful at the end of it. So to me, it was a really good song, that was at least, going to show people that, that we can be melancholy, but we can be hopeful at the same time. And this is the last thing I'll say, I promise you. We just debuted some of this material the other night in Rhode Island. We had a show in Rhode Island. And one of the best compliments, one of the most meaningful things that I've heard somebody say is this woman took me, off to the side after the show, and she didn't know us. She was dragged to the show by one of her friends who was a fan. So, she was a new fan that we were lucky to get. And she said, I didn't know any of your songs. She's like, but they all felt so familiar to me. And, she really made a point to say that. And then her words really hit me. It's the best thing I could have heard because that means that, she's hearing what's really there. And if it's familiar, then, that's a good thing. So I'll leave it at that.
I appreciate you guys sharing that, man. I'm excited to hear the full length, and that's a good segue to bring it home. And I won't keep you too much longer because I know we went a little bit over, and I don't want to take I don't want to be rude with y'all's time, and I want to be respectful of your time. But
hey, Mike, get your sleeping bag out, man. We're here all night. Let's go.
But one thing I did want to touch on, thanks again so much, fellas, for doing this, is segueing into that. Was I had seen that you guys had just played in Providence and Vito to bring you back into the fold, man. And thanks for sticking on, man. I'm sorry about the audio issues earlier, but how cool has it been to, I guess, with the history with V to be able to round out the sound and have him, come into the fold with this new era, if you will, of Dead Fish Handshake and what you guys have on deck for going into 2026, man.
Hi, I'm back. Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. So, if I understand your question correctly, you said, how do I feel? How do I feel about rounding out the sound going forward with this current lineup? Did I hear it right?
Yeah. Rob had talked a little bit earlier about how you guys had a connection going back to like earlier era of the band, and now that you're actually being part of Dead Fish Handshake, just want to get your thoughts on what it's like to be sharing the stage with these guys now and be part of like this new record cycle and everything.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think Matt touched on it briefly. So, there was, I originally the idea of the band wasn't even really a band, and then I guess it like evolved into potentially being a band. And I came down to jam. Rob, I think Rob had reached out to me, and but I was going that period of time, whenever that was not a good one for me at all. I probably had other work to do, let alone try to work on myself being in a band. I think I had to just work on myself a little bit. At any rate, it didn't line up then. But like again, the other thing that was touched upon was I was just asked to um, uh, provide. They asked me to join them on a live stream type thing, where we were going to put on something over the internet due to the COVID situation, and I was all about it because I was literally, me and Rob, we talk a lot out of the band also. So when I was not in the band and we were just friends, musical friends, there was a lot of like, check out this riff, man. A lot of that. And, and I guess what I'm trying to bring home there is like, I was a guitar player that was, playing through a probably way too loud amp at home by myself, with nowhere to do it. Right. So, fast forward, what started as a one-off live stream became, you know, how adding me, starting to learn some of the old repertoire, the old songs, and adding a second guitar to them any way we could. But I think the real fun and the real spark started happening when we started working on some of those, like that's why I mentioned them. Some of those riff ideas that Rob and I were going back and forth with for almost years. I mean, I think it was years, from like 2016 all the way up to like 2020. Just constant back and forth. Check this out, check that out. Oh man, that would be cool. Just those type of situations. So to put those into play, into real life, into action, that was really, really fun for me to hear them come to life, in a real band situation. And in terms of sharing the stage, I think we gel really well on stage, especially when there's room to move. It's amazing, we all demand our real estate on stage for sure. And when it's there, we're definitely going to take it. But yeah, I equate it to what Rob said earlier. Everyone butt heads, there's butting heads everywhere, and we're probably going to butt heads this week, I'm sure, again. But there is also an element of when something is on, it's on. And musically speaking, we have the capacity to really finish each other's musical sentences. And I don't know, just come out with some really great stuff. You know what I mean? Exciting stuff.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, that was important to me too. Yeah, I have a history with Vito, but it was important to me that once he came on board as a full-fledged member, yeah, I could turn around and say like, all right, Mero, here are 30 songs that you got to go learn. But it was, and not that he needed any sort of a jolt to be excited to join, because he was genuinely excited, but I wanted to get him involved in the creative process immediately. For that very reason, as he described, I wanted him to feel like, hey, I'm not just coming in here as a hired gun. I am a full member here, and I'm going to contribute. And oh, and these guys are open to it to boot. Like that's fantastic. And so I really pushed to make sure that some of those song ideas were worked on and then subsequently made the record. And that's not due to any sort of like writer's block by any stretch, because there's a good collection there waiting for them to hear next. But the thing is, like, I just wanted him to be part of it, not just be in the room, but like just feel a part of it. And I'll say the same thing with Ant. Like once we get this album cycle through, and we start kind of getting in the room and jamming with him, writing with him, like that's going to be cool too. And it's not going to be like, all right, man, pipe down and just play this song. It's like, what are you bringing to the table? Like, and I encourage that, because that's how we get better. Yeah, there are songs that I come in with complete, but then the collaborative process sometimes is just blows those songs away. So that was exciting to get him on board, and I think that that's what the future kind of holds for us.
And too, Mike, I wanted to say this about Vito because obviously with him not being on the call for the first part, we kind of got away from it. But you know, earlier on, I said that when I saw Rob playing in Down Shallow and my band was on the same bill, I was looking at it, I'm like, damn, like this guy's a rock star. Um, I felt the same way about Vito the first time I met him. When Vito came in to jam in the early days of this band, um, I'm not kidding. I thought Dave Navarro and Prince walked in through the door. I was a little bit younger than these guys. Well, I'm still a little bit younger than these guys, but I looked at them as like, these guys are rock stars. I got to step my game up in order to be with them. Vito had more rock and roll in his pinky, than I think that I had in my whole body. Like the guy just exudes it. So I was dying to get that in the band. Because why not? Why wouldn't you want that? Get away from, all my depressive lyrics and get some rock and roll, strutting going on in here. And
Some sexy.
yeah, and I love that. So between that layer of rock that he brings and the performance of Rob and the steadiness of a Mark Birkelbach on drums and a groove oriented bass player like Ant. I mean, it was just a cool thing. And traveling, I really feel this way about traveling at the speed of life. I think the song perfectly encapsulates who we are. And I think it was important to debut Vito in a way too, because obviously Rob's a phenomenal guitar player. And he was gracious enough to let the lead single be a solo from Vito. And the whole song really comes from a riff that Vito brought in that was influenced by Euro dance music. So, I think that's cool, and if nobody else does, I do. And it's an honor, to have guys like that in the band because, like Rob said, it makes you better. We're playing for a crowd, but ultimately we play for each other. And, to put a cap on this with reconciliation, you know, even when we're going through whatever, we get on that stage and we play for one another because I don't think we're going to let each other down at any point. So,
Well, fellas, this has been awesome. I really appreciate y'all's time, man, for real. I can't wait to listen to the whole record, and I think it's really cool that people, can go through darkness, and that's one of the whole reasons I love doing this podcast. And a theme that's important to me is because I think at times in life, especially when you're younger, at least for me, it's like, you want to be a good person and you're taught to do good, but at the same time, darkness is inevitable. It's a balance of the universe between dark and light. And in my life, I don't think all of the darkness that I've gone through has necessarily been like inherently bad, if that makes any kind of sense. Like we often look at dark and light as like good and evil, but I look at it in life as like balance, whether it's heartbreak, whether it's death. Maybe you're on the outs at certain points in times with friends or lovers, relationships, but at the end of the day, you have history with people and you have a connection with people. And so bringing it home with you guys, I think it's really cool that in your story, you've gone through what you guys have gone through personally and individually as humans and as people. And then you've gone through what you've gone through in your band, but you can still have that reconciliation to still say, hey, there's something left here. We bring out really good in each other. So despite the things that we've gone through individually or previous eras or things that had happened, we know we still have something left in the tank to create. And so that's why I love exploring these themes on this podcast because when harnessed the right way, when transmuted the right way, I think negative emotions or darkness can really, really translate into something beautiful. Music is a great medium and catalyst for that. So
And if I may, just on that note, there's a stigma in society, especially when it comes to men, You can't be in touch with your emotions. You can't be vulnerable. That's a sign of weakness. And you know, it's complete bullshit. I think that it's important to, it doesn't make you any less of a man, if you feel emotion. And and I think the sooner that we get that through our societal heads, you know, and people out there can actually appreciate what it means to be human. I think we'll be better for it. We're a lot more alike than we are different in this world, and everyone's constantly drawing a line in the sand. And if and God forbid you stand for this or you stand for that, we're you go out on a Saturday night to a show, or forget even a show. You go out to, it's July 4th and you're going to go watch fireworks, and you have a crowd gathered around, and you have all sorts of people from all walks of life, and they just want to enjoy that evening together and watch this fireworks display. And at no point does anyone want to feel unsafe or judged or anything like that, because we're people, man. Like we're a lot more alike than we are different. And the sooner we appreciate that, the sooner, I'm not going to say, you know love and music can save the world, but you know what, as cliche as that sounds, like, it was with a sweet little bow tie, kinda, like, if you think about it, like, if like patience, love, and understanding, like, that'll go a long way. Thank yous and apologies go a long way. So I don't know, like I just think that it's important, and that's what some of our music does connect with. It's not always the negative attributes of what's being said. It's, hey, if someone can relate and say, like, hey, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I feel this too. And and it's nice to have, um, to feel a brother in arms, if you will, to know that there's somebody out there that's feeling like you do. And I think that that's in like I said, in a nice little package. Like, that's what our music is. It's just, it's real, it's authentic. It doesn't come from, because, as Matt said, because it's cool or it's supposed to be said. It's not. It comes from a genuine place, and that's what I hope people get when they listen. We all we've ever asked for is a fair and square chance to be heard, and give us a chance. If you hate it, that's okay. Like, it doesn't make you a bad person, but just give us a chance. And I think that our music has a lot to offer if you're listening.
And Mike, too, just before we part here, you talked about the darkness and the light, and the cliche that comes with that. The truth is this: darkness gathers around the light. So bad times are going to be around good people. That's what this world is, unfortunately. The power that we have is you can be that light switch, but you got to choose it. You got to choose to turn that heart light on. And once you realize that that's really what your superpower is, and you can do that, the darkness will disappear. So I hope our music can remind people of that. One thing, it's great to be, compared to, a metal band, like a Sevendust, but I think it's important to know too, to anybody listening, we're not a metal band. I love metal music. I come from metal music. I love metal musicians. I listen to a ton of it, but we're not. We've got some heavy elements, but I think the heaviness that's in our band, especially right now, is really the lives that we've lived. And I think our music is really just more universal modern rock. And hopefully, whatever decade you became a fan of music, hopefully you can find some of that in what we do.
Well, Matthew, Rob, Vito, thank you so much, man, for taking the time that you've taken with me tonight. I know we went over, but I really enjoyed the conversation. So I hope I didn't chew y'all's ears off too much, man. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys staying over with me, but I'm a genuine fan of what you guys are doing, and I'm grateful to Shay for setting it up. I want everybody to go run up the numbers on Traveling at the Speed of Life. Stay tuned to the socials for Safe in the Harms of Love, the new album coming out. And for people who are unaware of Dead Fish Handshake, and maybe there's going to be new fans that come out of this conversation or are new to you guys, let them know where they can find you out there and stay in touch with you.
We're on all socials. Our music is on all streaming services. And of course, if you catch us live, come up and say hello. We love meeting you.
And Mike, you're always welcome anytime with us. I hate to break it to you, but you're part of the family now too.
Alrighty, dighty, there you have it. That was my conversation with Matthew, Rob, and V of Dead Fish Handshake. Make sure you go follow these guys on Instagram at Dead Fish Handshake. Their website is deadfishhandshake.com. The link tree with all of their stuff is going to be in the podcast description for this episode. So you know what to do. Scroll down to the bottom of that podcast description, hit those links, and go follow and support my new friends in Dead Fish Handshake. You will not be disappointed if you love hard rock, if you love heartfelt lyrics, great musicianship, as you heard in that conversation. Once again, like I said at the jump, their new single, Traveling at the Speed of Life, just came out on November 7th. It is available everywhere you get your music, so please go run up the numbers on the new single. It's a great one. And keep an eye out for their new album, Safe in the Harms of Love, which is due in 2026. I just want to say directly to Matthew, Rob, and Vito, thank you so much, you guys, for taking the time to come on this podcast and share more than an hour of your time with me. And thank you, V, too, for persevering through some audio issues. I know we had some connectivity issues on that Zoom call, man. Sometimes it happens, but I appreciate you hopping back on at the end, man, and still being able to be part of the conversation. I really appreciate it. And same to you, Rob and Matthew. I really appreciate you guys opening up to me about Dead Fish Handshake and the different eras of the band, where you guys are now, how you got here. And again, this conversation, like I said at the beginning, it really is the embodiment of what this podcast is all about in terms of March 4th, persevering, moving forward. You guys persevered through lineup changes. You persevered through COVID, reconnected, reconciled, and have dope new music out, and have got more dope new music on the way, man. So I genuinely appreciate the time. And in terms of mental health and just life and the things that we go through, obviously having an outlet like music, I'm sure is a very cathartic thing. And just like this podcast is cathartic with me. And it's great when we can all be vulnerable as men and we can have real conversations and go deep, not just on the music, but just on life. And so I really appreciate the time, and I really appreciate you guys opening up to me, just as men and fellow humans out here, just trying to be good people out in the world. So I appreciate y'all. You are welcome back anytime. Once again, everybody, at Dead Fish Handshake on Instagram if you're on IG. If you are not on IG, the link tree with all of their stuff is going to be in the podcast description for this episode. Go listen to the new single, Traveling at the Speed of Life, and stay up to date with these guys for future shows if you want to go catch them live. That is going to be a wrap for your boy on this episode. Once again, if you enjoyed what you heard, please go follow me at March 4th Pod on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. If you look up March 4th Pod, I am on all of those. My link tree is in the podcast description for this episode as well. So if you did enjoy what you heard, one thing that goes a long way in helping these algorithms that pretty much are in the underbelly of running the world, for better or worse. But if you take the time to leave a rating and a review on whatever streaming service you listen to this podcast on, it goes a long way in helping this conversation get out to more people. And that's what I want, man. I want more people to find out about Dead Fish Handshake and his comeback that they're on with the new music. And I want more people to know that it's cool, especially as men. It's good to talk about mental health and get stuff off our chest. And we did all that on this conversation. So if you dug it, welcome aboard the pirate ship. But if you would take some time to do that, I know on Spotify and Apple in particular, it's a 5-star rating system for the for the podcast itself. So you can go on there and leave a rating and a review of the show, leave a comment, and it'll help rank higher in the algorithm and get this conversation and this band out to more people, man. So I would appreciate it. I really appreciate all y'all's time, man. Again, wherever life finds you right now, if you're up, down, I see, fair to middling, just know that it gets better. there's always going to be a balance of light and darkness in the universe, like I've said a few times now. And learning how to transmute that darkness into positivity, it's tough, man. It's hard. There's a lot of awful things that happen in this world every single day, but there's also a lot of really good people out there, like the dudes in Dead Fish Handshake, man, that are making the most of it. That old saying, when life gives you lemons, you know what I'm saying? So do the best with what you got, and hang tough. It gets better. Trust me, it gets better. Keep the faith and be kind to one another and be kind to yourselves. Courtesy of my new friends in Dead Fish Handshake, here is their new single, Traveling at the Speed of Life. Peace.
Life spins us right around, then the wrecking ball knocks us all down. Feels like we're all losing ground. Every one of us screaming, pull me out. I